Excellent. It is 6:30 and I'd like to call this meeting of council to order and acknowledge that the city of Winkler is situated on Treaty 1 land, the home of the Anishinaabe, the Cree, the Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. We respect the treaties that have been made on these territories and dedicate ourselves to a future based on respect for all peoples moving forward to a harmonious, prosperous future together. Be it resolved that the agenda for the regular council meeting of May 27th, 2025 be adopted. Mover?
Andrew.
Second.
Ryan.
Ryan got you by just a little bit. Do we have any additions to what we see?
Nope.
Not seeing any. I would like to acknowledge for those people in chambers here or those watching that Councillor Marvin Platt is not in chambers, but has called in and he's zoomed in and he's ready to listen and participate. I will ask Marvin that when you make a motion that you state so clearly, and when we have votes, if you're voting either yay or nay, that you do so by stating yay or nay verbally.
Will do.
Thank you very much. Not seeing anything else. All in favor?
Yay.
And that is carried. Moving to, be it resolved that the regular meeting of, minutes of the regular council meeting of May 13th, 2025 be adopted. Mover?
Peter. Marvin.
Comments on what you see? All in favor?
Yay.
Carried. We have a couple of pieces of correspondence. Obviously, the 2025 Municipal Operating Grant and one Manitoba Growth Fund, Revenue Fund.
Is that the former gas tax or what is that?
Nope, this is that new fund that they announced, the province did, where we get a per capita fund. I believe ours was, what, about $127,000. This is brand new money that was announced last year for the first time and re-announced this year, and this year we're getting the check. The municipal operating grant is one that we traditionally get from the province of Manitoba, and it's a bit of a basket funding for a number of different pieces.
Okay.
Maybe David.
That's exactly correct, yep.
Perfect.
And this year it increased by 2.8%, as shared in the notes.
Which is kind of nice, because our expenses didn't go down. Any other questions? Continuing then to the second piece. As we sometimes do, we receive requests for proclamations. It is strictly added here for your information. No decision, no motion is required. Continuing then into finance, be it resolved that accounts payable in the amount of $2,601,892,000.21 as approved by the Finance Committee be approved for payment. Mover?
Andrew.
Do we have a second?
Don.
Thank you. Any thoughts? As always, the register is attached. Do you have any questions on what you see? All in favor?
Yay.
Carried. Be it resolved that the financial report and statements for April 2025 be received for information. Mover.
Andrew.
Second.
Don.
Thank you. Also attached, a really good description, almost line-by-line description. It certainly tells us of any significant changes or variances or anything that David Martins, as our Director of Corporate Services, believes we should be aware of. Do you have any question on anything that you see there?
Do not.
Very straightforward, very normal for this time of year based on what I see, David.
Correct.
And he's nodding his head in agreement. All in favor?
Yay.
Carried. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2345-25, the tax levy, be read a second time. Mover?
Peter.
Second.
Ryan.
It's attached there. David, can you help us just get a quick grasp of it? We put it on the floor last time and we've done all of this, but now maybe you can give us a Reader's Digest
Yep.
version.
So this is the bylaw that gives the municipality, the city of Winkler, the right to put the mill rates in place that we indicate already on our financial plan back in March when we brought the financial plan forward as a public hearing. And at that same time, we also had first reading, and this is now the second and third. So after we had the third reading, we will submit this to the province so that we can get our taxes printed and mailed out shortly, so.
Okay, thank you, David. Thoughts or questions from council? All in favor?
Yay.
Carried. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2345-25, the tax levy, be read a third and final time. Mover?
Don.
Second.
Michael.
Final thoughts? All in favor?
Yay.
Carried. Takes us through to planning. Be it resolved that the minutes for the planning committee meeting of May 13th, 2025 be adopted. Mover.
Don.
Second.
Ryan.
Both the minutes and the in-camera portion are attached for review. Is there anything particular we should be aware of, or do you have questions on? All in favor?
Yay.
Carried. Be it resolved that the minutes and reports for the April 2025 meeting of MSTW be received for information. Mover.
Don.
Second.
Michael.
Again attached.
Good to see single-family homes finally getting built.
Yeah.
It's very
Well,
nice to
since
see.
we've seen those numbers, so that's exciting.
Very, very nice. No other comments? All in favor?
Yay.
Carried.
Kicked out again now.
Already? You guys?
Not yet. Oh, yeah.
Whereas the rural municipality of Stanley has submitted subdivision application number 4190-25-8469 for land within the MSTW collaborative planning area adjacent to the city of Winkler. And whereas section 9.3 policies of the MSTW development plan requires a resolution of support from the city before the rural municipality can approve such applications. And whereas the city has reviewed the application, finds it generally meets the conditions of the MSTW development plan, as no land use changes are proposed and the application is being made to facilitate estate planning only. Therefore, be it resolved that the city of Winkler supports subdivision number 4190-25-8469. Mover.
Peter.
Second.
Michael.
Marvin beat you just by a little bit, Michael. Notes are attached. Again, generally meets it. It's in a neighboring municipalities. We have an opportunity to see it and speak to it. Does council have any concerns or questions? All in favor?
Yay.
And that is carried. Be it resolved that the South Central Regional Library minutes for the April 7th, 2025 meeting be received for information. Mover?
Ryan.
Second.
Michael.
Marvin.
Michael beat Marvin just by a little bit that time. Minutes are attached. Anything we should be aware of, Ryan?
Yeah, I think, so at that meeting, we were talking about the 60th anniversary celebration that was had. It sounded like it was well attended, and those that went had a great time. They're also talking about the upcoming book sale, which has already happened, and also about they were doing a 50-50 raffle, which again has already happened. So
Excellent. The fact that you're here tonight and not celebrating someone
Yeah.
else leads me to believe you did not win.
I did not.
Excellent. Seeing nothing further, all in favor?
Yay.
Carried. That will then take us to public hearings. Be it resolved that this regular meeting of council recess for the purpose of holding public hearings. David, if you would help us run through the process a little bit and just let us know how we're going to go about this.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, so we have a number of public hearings on the agenda today. And so I'd just like to give a little bit of an intro to public hearings. So when we have a public hearing, and I will open a public hearing, and if you would like to speak on behalf of the public hearing, we ask that you come to the microphone, state your name, address, And when you're speaking on behalf of the public hearing, please address the chair. And yeah, we will start off with the applicant, and then everyone that wants to speak in favor of the application will follow, and then everyone that has a concern or is opposed to the application after that. So, but from there on, Henry will lead us through that as well. So I will open the first public hearing now. It's a public hearing on an application for a variance. And this is now an application that was on the floor already on the May 13th meeting, so last meeting 2 weeks ago. And it was recessed at that time to allow for the applicant and the neighbor to give them some time to work together on this application. And the applicant is Pinnacle Incorporated. The owner is Eric and Randy Unruh. It's at 8 Cardinal Place, and the variance requested is to reduce the required north rear yard to an odd-shaped lot from 25 feet to 9 feet and 3 inches in the R1 zone. The purpose is in order to construct, in addition, to accommodate an indoor pool. And so there's a report to council attached to this application. And I'd just like to highlight a few things from the report. At our last meeting, there was a question that was brought up regarding the current construction that is going on at this location, and if a building permit had been issued for it. And I can confirm that MSCW, our planning district, investigated it, and they can confirm that the work that has commenced at 8 Cardinal Place falls within the approved development and building permit. And so also, another thing that was mentioned 2 weeks ago was there was a little bit of a concern regarding drainage. And I also like to highlight here now that the approved lot grading permit requires the property owner to adhere to city-approved design grades to maintain the approved drainage pattern on the property. And the engineering services is aware of the existing drainage issues in the Lakespur neighborhood and has plans to investigate potential solutions. Also, from 2 weeks ago, we have not received any additional objections since May 13th. And the last thing I'd like to highlight is that we also received revised plans from the applicant, and these plans were also attached to the agenda, where they were also shared with the owner and the neighbor on May 26th. And we also received some new information from one of the neighbors today, which are also attached to the agenda. So, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, David. As already mentioned, the proponent will have an opportunity to speak first, should they so desire. If there's anything new that they wish to add or speak to, we'll give Pinnacle an opportunity to take the microphone and bring what they can.
There's no place we'd rather be tonight. So I just want to put a little context here.
I'll quickly ask, just for the record's sake, I'll ask you to state your name and who you're
Yes,
with.
forgot, sorry. My name is John Cron.
Nice
with
to meet you,
Pinnacle.
John.
We are the applicant working on behalf of Eric and Randy. So 2 phases to this project. The first being a renovation in discussion for a long time with Eric and Randy, dating back probably almost a year actually. And so part of that
John,
process.
I'll ask you to get a little bit closer to the microphone. I'm understanding that the people aren't able to hear you in chambers.
So two phases to the project. First,
Thank
the
you.
renovation. A lot of planning into that, and probably, I believe it was last fall, when we were designing the renovation, we contacted the city to see what the setbacks were on the lot, because we were planning a renovation along with a pool room addition. We were told it was to be treated as a rear yard, and so the entire renovation was planned for this pool to be within 5 to 10 feet from the border. So there has been an extensive renovation done to this home to accommodate this future pool room, including an elevator, including making the entire home accessible. During that process, Eric and Randy gave us the call, said we'd like to proceed with the pool. So we apply for the permit on the pool, and we're told that's a rear yard, you need a variance. And so that's kind of where this matter happened. And that's kind of why we're here. So Had we known that in the beginning, we possibly would have planned it differently, or we would have at least done this first. Um, But we're pretty heavily invested into this project at this point, so just want to make that clear. Also want to make clear, of course, there's permits. We only don't pull permits when it's absolutely necessary to get something done. So jokes aside, but
And I do appreciate that, John, and I also appreciate, David, you having done the research. As we mentioned at the last meeting, Pinnacle is known as a developer in our community. It's a developer who follows the rules. So we stated it there, but it was important to make sure that we clarified it here today, and we thank you for that.
thank you, yep. And I would just add, MSTW, most of your planning department, like, it's really easy to actually have communication before you start a project, and that's why we do these things, like, we email before we start something, and we say, you know, what can we do here to make this work, right? And so we try pretty hard to do that. If we can pull up the plans, are we allowed to do that here?
Yes, we are.
Okay. If you can just go to the last page of that package that I sent. I just want to show you the existing view out of the under patio door right now. The very last page in that package. So this is the view, and you can feel free to zoom in. This is the current view out of the back of that home. And so the entire design was with in mind giving both neighbors more privacy. As you can see, this home is pretty high off the ground because it has about a 100-foot driveway. And so that gives them a pretty clear view into that neighboring backyard. And so one of the goals was, how do we create some more privacy here? That's one of the reasons the room is where it is.
Okay.
And so we designed it in such a way as to give both sides privacy. And so, yeah, I just want to show you that, and then scroll back up to the top. That's kind of the view, the top page, that's the view currently. Obviously, it's a rendering, so it's not a picture, but that's kind of the view right now from the patio back there. Obviously, you can see there's a lot of windows there. A little bit concerning for both sides. So what we propose is to add the pool room addition coming out of that end and kind of adjacent to that, what I would say kind of the side property line on that adjacent yard. Scroll down, please. So this is the pool room. At first, we didn't have any windows in there. It was a concern, so we did add some windows. Again, privacy was the goal. We could put some coating on the windows or whatever if needed. The home is pretty high because of the long driveway, and so that's part of the probably concern here. There's not much that can be done about that. It is what it is, kind of, right? It's already there. It's already really high, and versus the neighboring yard. Scroll down, I believe. Keep going. So this is the kind of an overhead view showing the obstruction. The blue section there, that's the pool room addition. The red is the obstruction of view from the neighboring property. The green is what's not affected. That's with this pool room being attached to the home. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now scroll up a page, please. So bylaws are interesting because we can build this pool room detached 5 feet from the border, and this is what you would see. And so I think the purpose of a variance is when bylaws don't make sense, then you can adjust things a little bit, right? Because this clearly doesn't make sense for either side. And you can scroll down 2 pages now, I believe. This is the obstructed view with that option. Not to mention that it is very inconvenient for a family with special needs children.
Okay.
So some other comments. Parking was a concern at one point, I believe in the last, I was sitting at the Blue Jays game listening to the hearing last time, so.
I don't think the Blue Jays won that game.
They didn't, no. It's because I wasn't cheering loud. So the driveway I already mentioned is really long. You could park a dozen vehicles on this yard. If parking is a concern, I don't know of any other yard in Winkler where you can park a dozen vehicles. Take a drive by, you can park a lot of vehicles on this yard, not to mention there's a side drive that takes you to a large parking area in the back. Parking will not be an issue here. And also wanted to address the petition that was brought forward from 11 households represented. Of those 11 households, I believe 9 of them were not from Cardinal, they were from Larkspur. 8 of them are not affected by this request, in my opinion. There was 2 households on Cardinal represented. I will let Eric and Randy speak to those. Yeah, I'll leave it at that, and then I'll let Eric and Randy speak to that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. As already mentioned, anybody else wishing to speak in support of this, we would next give them an opportunity to come to the microphone, state their name, and then state their point.
Okay, we are Eric and Randy Amra, Cardinal Place.
Randy, I'll ask you also to get right up
Not
to
that
that
tall.
microphone. Thank
Eric
you.
and Randy Amra, 8 Cardinal Place. So John already addressed a few things. I guess the one other thing we wanted to talk about was the petition. And I did want to ask that you would consider how much weight you give this petition. Number one, because as he said, a lot of those people on the list can't even see our property or our addition, so I'm not The other issue is, I guess, we don't know what these people were told upon signing the petition. We were able to speak to a few of the neighbors that were approached to sign the petition or whose names were on there because we wanted to hear their concerns. And they were very, very emphatic that they did not have concerns, that they were very happy for us to do this.
Told 3 or 4 different lies.
The concerning part is that they did tell us certain things they were told that were not accurate. So then we feel that this petition may not be an accurate representation of people who actually object this addition. The other thing is, I know we talked to the city city planning a little bit about potentially getting some letters of support for us, just to show this in the meeting. We debated it. It didn't feel like the right move in the spirit of being a good neighbor. It felt a little bit like, okay, this is Team Ginter, this is Team UNRWA, and I didn't feel comfortable doing that. I didn't want to put our neighbors in a difficult position of putting their names to one side or the other. I feel like that's not neighborly, not what we wanted to do with this. So.
Trying to make this a good experience.
And Eric, I'll ask you if you're going to speak, because we're also broadcast each one of our meetings, so it's important that everyone has an opportunity to hear it.
Yeah, it's turned into something that's kind of sour, and we don't want to contribute to that. We don't want to contribute to any negative feelings in our new neighborhood. Yeah, I think those are the main things.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I'm Eric Udra,
Hi, Eric.
Randy's husband. Yeah, I think John did a really good job kind of showing you guys kind of why we have the opportunity for variances, right? Yeah, when there's not a great option for detached and it does block a large amount of view to the neighbors, and it's really not ideal for us either going outside.
Mhm.
It's like, this is why it's cool. We can actually snug it into the corner, bring it up against our house, and just block a lot less view for the neighbors. So yeah, I think that's about all we have to say.
We did look, Randy and Rick, and we did look at some other options, and this just seemed like the best option for the whole neighborhood and the aesthetic of the neighborhood. We did offer, like John said, to add some windows if it would look nicer from the other side, plant some trees to look nicer. So those were the offers that we made when we met with the neighbor. We did meet together, but we were not able to come to a conclusion that both sides were happy with. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Was it ever considered to use the other part of the yard?
I think we briefly looked at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not an ideal.
And I'll ask you again right to the microphone.
Randy
Thank you.
Unra.
Thank you.
It was not an ideal setup for the way that our home is laid out, just because we did do this whole renovation based on this flow. And I suppose if we used the other side of the yard, then it would have been along a different neighbor, like a different neighbor as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Other questions of council before we give opportunity for anyone else to speak in favor? Not at this point. Thank you both. Is there anybody else here wishing to speak in support of this?
Also short. I'm Autumn Dewick, 1371 Shamrock Bay in Winkler, so just a community member and a friend of Randy and Eric's. I just wanted to show support as a community member. I've been friends with them for a long time. I do believe that they are very considerate people. I like the fact that they did talk to the neighbors or tried to, that they did consider what would be blocking their view best and going, hey, actually, it would be better over here. And I think that shows a lot of character to consider your neighbors ahead of time when it's on your own property. So to me, the variance does make sense. Yeah, there's not many opportunities for kids with disabilities to do things in Winkler. I think that would be something that as a city we're working towards, but there just aren't that many opportunities, especially for a child like Brody who would need extra support. When you need to have a one-on-one, that just makes it really hard. We do not have an indoor pool, and water therapy and swimming is amazing for muscle building, for regulation, for all sorts of things. And since we don't have an indoor pool to do that in winter, it makes sense that they would want to have this on their yard. Even in summer, kids with disabilities tend to be quite sensitive to temperature changes and the cold. So the public swimming pool, as it works very well for typical kids, does not always work well for kids with disabilities who are sensitive to temperature changes, can't regulate their own temperature, can't be out in the sun that long, noise and kids splashing and stuff. It just is, it's hard. It's hard to take your kid with disability places. So as a community member, I love the fact that they're thinking of their son, they're thinking of what's going to work for him, and how can this work for other community members to come join them at the pool. Just to be clear, I'm a mom with a kid with a disability as well. So of course I want the pool to swim in winter, but also I know that my son would thrive, and I love that they aren't just thinking about themselves, they're really trying hard to think about their neighbors and the community. So as a community member, I just want to say that I'm in full support of the variance for them.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in chambers who would like to speak in support of this application?
Yes, hello. I am I'm Don Martins. I live at number 1 Cardinal Place, and I don't have a technical presentation, but I just want to express my gratefulness that we've got a wonderful family moving to the city of Winkler, and as a neighbor, I am in full support of what they're planning to do there, and I just wanted to express that.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor? Not seeing anyone else, I'll ask if there's anyone who wishes to speak in opposition. And I'll ask you if you'd like to come to the microphone, Ron, state your name and please present your points.
Good evening. I'm Ron Ginter. I live at 653 Larkspur Crescent, immediate opposite the proposed application variance here. You know, and I didn't have this in my presentation, but you know, for Fran and me, it's not about a popularity contest. It's not about us not caring for disability kids. It's about none of that. This is a zoning variance that we're addressing, and we have total empathy for their family and for the ones that are supporting here. As a matter of fact, we have supported some of those same people that are here. So it's certainly, it is nothing about that. We are somewhat surprised actually that we're here at this meeting today, same as we were 2 weeks ago in regards to the zoning bylaw number 2271, which clearly states that the rear yard setbacks should be 25 feet. And we all understand the need for variances. You know, in granting like a 10% variance to accommodate tight spaces or something that's a little bit off, totally expected, totally reasonable. And if that were the case here, we would not have even attended the last meeting. We would have just been totally in favor and let them go. And but to go from a 9-foot setback to the required 25-foot is, in our view, unreasonable. As has already been mentioned, the lot is huge. There is ample space on that lot, and so there is no demonstrated hardship to comply with the required setbacks. It is unfortunate that the builder was given misleading information about what is a side yard and what is a backyard. And our lot is exactly the same way. We have 2 side yards and 2 rear yards. And if you look at a city lot map, it's pretty clear that this is a backyard. All the water from Larkspur Crescent that are on our side and half of the yards from Cardinal Place drain down this backyard. Water drains down backyards, not side yards, to the city control structure that is in the back of us. It's a great setup. So rear yard setbacks are 25 feet for any structure that is attached to an existing home. For Fran and me, nothing about this whole situation is personal with the applicants. It's been exciting to see the renovations that are an activity that's been happening there, and we're looking forward to getting to know new neighbors. We want to stress that our goal here has never been to oppose your project. That has never been our intent, but to work towards a solution that respects both your plans and our concerns. We have always been open to discussing design alternatives or possible adjustments to the placement of the pool house that might better comply with local regulations and help preserve the neighborhood character that we both enjoy. We want it to be a win for both parties. We took council's advice here at the last meeting and met with Eric and Randy, and we did that on Friday, and we thought we had come up with what we thought would be a win for both of us. We believed we came up with a reasonable compromise for both of us, and when they left our place, we were totally convinced that we would be able to come to that agreement or a compromise. Unfortunately, we were notified by the applicant yesterday that they are not willing to compromise whatsoever with what we believe is a reasonable solution for both of us. We have tried to be good stewards of our property and value the R1 neighborhood that we live in. You know, we have lived in a number of homes in Winnipeg, we have lived in a number of homes in Winkler, and we have never had any issues with any of our neighbors. And we hope that will continue here. In terms of the signatures that we have, yes, we are the most directly affected by this structure. The signatures that we got from the people on Larkspur Crescent, for example, the concern is if this 25-foot variance gets granted, in this situation, will that be something that might be easier to get the next time? And will that affect the integrity and quality of an R1 neighborhood? It had nothing to do with them affecting any sight lines or anything. It was just a thing that they were concerned about. So we petition council to defeat the requested variance. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ron. Does anyone have questions of Ron?
I have a few comments and maybe observations, but given the way the pool they want the pool situated, added onto the house, is less of an obstruction than when it's built away from the house, right, as a standalone building. So, and that one can be done without any variation or without anything, right? It's so for me, if you have a choice, and they obviously have a choice, are they gonna build it to the house or are they gonna build it standalone? But if we defeat this variation, the standalone will give you more of an obstruction, right? That's a bit of a tough one, and we're put into a tough position here to make this decision.
Okay.
If we defeat it, we make it
Right.
worse for you. So it's a tough one to navigate, Ron.
Okay, can we just look at some of the things I submitted? Can you go to this one? There was a reference made at the last meeting too about getting more renderings, and as a matter of fact, I emailed, well, I guess I texted, I needed more drawings because my mind doesn't visualize stuff very well, and I like pictures. We did get the renderings of the structure from our patio deck. We did not get any renderings from the front driveway as we requested, and we did not get any renderings showing what the structure would look like at the required 25-foot setback. This, can we go to this one? This is a rendering of what the backyard will look like, and the structure there to the left is the pool, and the area in the middle is their deck. The deck, I believe, is somewhere close to 600 square, 582 at 21, but whatever, it's a big deck. And our proposal, if you want to give me this drawing here, that one right there, and our proposal to angle it a little bit further away from, and that was our compromise that we thought we had worked out with Eric and Randy when they were over, would take away some of that concrete deck. Yes, it would. But if a concrete deck is as big as this room here, maybe, I don't know, maybe, but when John Cron came down to our place, he was very adamant that, well, it doesn't look good. Well, you know, when we built our house, we worked with an architect and a great builder, and he suggested things to us that he thought were good, but we didn't think were so good. So, you know, our builder and our architect, they compromised. So that their back deck and their whole backyard, it's fabulous. It's a fabulous space, guys. And the John Cron and the builders, they just did a great drawing there. But to me, by angling it, it doesn't take that much space away from that deck. Yeah, it won't be exactly square, but that's the way it is. If we go to the existing view, and we've already been shown that, but I have it here too. That's one more. That's the existing view. This is, I think, normal for what you would see in an R1 neighborhood from your, like, you see your neighboring yard and house. Yes, the house is up fairly high. It always has been. But it looks like kind of like a normal R1 neighborhood. If you go to this is the view that we would see with the structure, as far as I know, being 9 foot from the property line. Does that look like a normal residential home? It looks like a whatever. The drawing that John had submitted, it's this one here from the backyard. is his, and I did understand this right, John, the green part is the unobstructed view, right? Okay. He drew the red part in there. The only problem is the starting point of that triangle on our yard is by our back bedroom. That's not where our main living area is. Can I go to that drawing there a little bit? Henry?
I think we can take the microphone with you, right? If you're going to speak while you're there.
Okay, if you go back to where the black line is right on top by our place, that's our main living area there. So that's where the view should be taken from, and if you go straight out, that would be in fact the red line. I've drawn it in orange there, but that would actually be a more view that would be a little bit more correct than what they've drawn in there. And that's what I've got in. The line of sight is actually the black line drawn in. The black line is the line of sight supported by option number 1 drawing. Yeah. So in terms of the signatures again, yes, and to me, it's not a popularity contest. If I wanted to, I could have gone out and I could have got 100 signatures from all over, like whatever. It doesn't really mean anything. But to get signatures from people on our bay, on Larkspur Crescent, and to get 4 residences on Cardinal Place to say, this does not make sense. And the 4 residences on Cardinal Place, and I don't know where this thing is coming from that I am going around and saying things about Eric and Randy. It's not true. I have not told anything to the neighbors that Eric didn't hear at my place on April the 26th. That's just the way it is. And I would like to formally submit these signatures as well, if I could.
Yes, sure.
And I would ask Ron what those signatures are, or what the petition is, and who the signatures are. Is this something new that we haven't seen?
Okay, I had sent some signatures in the previous time.
Correct.
This is the same thing. We respectfully request the City of Winkler deny the requested variance and maintain the zoning requirement of 25 feet.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's 2 residences on Cardinal Place and 2 residences on Larkspur Crescent. These are in addition to the ones that were already submitted.
Okay. Thank you. Does council have questions or comments for Ron? Not seeing any at this point. I'll thank you very much, Ron. I'll ask if there's anybody else here who wishes to speak in opposition to this variation.
Good evening, Mayor Siemens, councilors and guests. My name is Krista Ginter. I'm daughter of Ron and Fran Ginter. I live in Winnipeg and I'm here tonight to support my parents. My parents have been a part of this great community for basically their entire lives. They both grew up here, raised a family here, worked here, and were involved in many aspects of Winkler life. After a productive, busy, and full life, they have now chosen and are enjoying their retirement here, specifically in a beautiful new R1 neighborhood. They have thoroughly enjoyed this peaceful area along with getting to know all of their neighbors. One of the benefits of living in Canada is the freedom to choose where we want to live, be it rural or urban. The place we choose tells us much about a person. Choosing to live in a quiet, beautiful neighborhood says that a person values beauty, tranquility, and a desire to be part of a community. This description fits my parents. Bylaws exist in the building and planning of urban settings to ensure that consistency and cohesiveness exists. This may be in an industrial or residential zone. One would not be allowed to build a big commercial building in a residential zone, nor would a home be allowed to be built in an industrial zone. The R1 classification is for low-density residential zones, bigger lots, more space. A 1,700 plus square foot, 25-foot high structure simply does not fit this description, especially when it goes against zoning bylaws, and will most certainly impede the aesthetic appeal of the area. An addition of this magnitude is bigger than many residences in Winkler, as previously mentioned, will not be pleasing to look at, and will definitely decrease the value of homes in the area of my parents' home when they eventually decide to sell. At the last council meeting on May 13th, Councillor Plett urged both parties to meet and try to come up with a compromise to this situation. He suggested that if the variance request came to a vote, one party would win and the other would lose. May I suggest that even though my parents and their property will be the most directly affected, there are other people who supported and signed the petition against the variance, and they will also be negatively affected in some capacity, maybe not directly. As you have heard, meetings have occurred between my parents and the applicants. My parents did suggest some ideas and were willing to be flexible. The other party was willing to compromise at first, but have since changed their minds and are now refusing to compromise in any manner. Needless to say, this is very disappointing. Please note, the opposition to the variance has nothing to do with the other party as people and is not meant as an attack on their character or what they are wanting to do for their son. This is also not in my presentation, but 2 times now the applicant has made reference to the fact that my dad is going around and spreading lies, and I find this extremely offensive. I would question what those lies are, as I'm pretty sure the only lie my dad ever told was that Santa Claus was real. Therefore, I respectfully request that the variance application be denied. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Council have any questions or comments for Krista? Thank you. Is there anybody else here wishing to speak in opposition?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening.
Council, my name is Max Waddell, and I'm Ron and Fran's son-in-law. I don't think in order for council to make a proper decision on this motion, the size of this structure can be understated. We are talking about a building that is this size or larger than most homes in Winkler. We're not talking about putting a 9x12 shed in someone's backyard here or building a small garage. We're talking about a structure that is 25 feet in the air and 1,750 square feet. Mr. Cron, the builder, indicated that privacy was the main thought in mind when building this structure. Well, I would suggest there is going to be no privacy other than a complete blockage of a view that's existed for over 12 years. The reason that Ron and Fran bought the home they did was to have this beautiful southeast, straight south, and southwest view. This is going to be greatly impeded. Mr. Fraze, you made the comment that yes, we could move beyond this motion and that the applicants could build a standalone structure. That will not happen. And I'm going to tell you why it's not going to happen, because they've already invested heavily in their house. They've already put an elevator in it. And additionally, who's going to want to be walking back and forth in freezing cold temperatures throughout the year? It won't happen. That's not an option. I don't believe that will happen. So I just strongly urge you to really consider the facts here. And as one of the supporters of the applicants was, yes, Winnipeg does need a pool. And I said that the last time I came here. A pool of this structure should be a commercial facility that the entire community can enjoy, not just someone's residence of this size. Why can the structure not be 1,000 square feet or even less? There are alternatives here than to a 1,750 square foot facility. There's many. You could dig down. You could put this facility lower. You could do off ramps. There are many, many alternatives. So I ask that you please consider this decision very, very seriously, as there are going to be very, very upset people as a result of this motion if it's not carefully considered. I thank you for your time.
Appreciate that, and I do want to assure you that this motion, and all are, this one in particular, because of the amount of people both for and against, is getting the full weight of every consideration that we can.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I forgot to add that also the neighbor directly beside the applicant is also in opposition. That was a signature. So you have people on both sides who are the ones that did sign and are in opposition. And they are the most two impacted people out of this entire event. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Not seeing anybody on council with thoughts. I'll ask if there is anybody else who wishes to have final comments. At this point in time, if there's a new information or question that anyone would like to answer, if you're for the project, or if there's any final thoughts if you're in opposition. Once we close the hearing, council will will debate and make a decision, but if you're wanting to speak to anything, now would be the time to do so.
John Cron here again with Pinnacle. So I just wanted to speak to some of those comments.
Please.
The confusion with the backyard versus side yard is because the bylaws are a little fuzzy on pie shape versus irregular, and it's a little bit wordy. So it's an honest mistake. Nonetheless, it's done. Again, one of the reasons the building is where it is because we assumed that was a bedroom on the side there. With good intent, again, not to try to block the neighbor's view. I'd like to speak to the deck shape a little bit.
Please.
If you have friends or if you know people with disabilities, their mobilization takes a lot of space. Especially when you get into some powered chairs and things like that, it takes a lot of space. We did look at angling that pool a little more. It leaves them with a very narrow opening, and when you have accessibility coming onto that back patio and the movement of people around that back patio, it renders it not very useful. Definitely, we looked at it, we drew it. We have many hours of drafting on this project trying to come up with good solutions. The size of the structure, I'd like to address that as well. This is a huge lot. It's a weird lot. And the original home was not built by Eric and Randy, and the way it's laid out, this is the best place for this pool. We believe that it's a small inconvenience. Yes, it does change their view, absolutely.
Sorry, I can't hear. Could you just speak up, please?
I will try, yes.
Thank you.
So we understand that there is what we believe to be their side yard of their bedroom is obstructed. And if you're sitting on the patio and you look sideways, you will see this structure. If you looked from a parallel line, or perpendicular line from the back of the home, you will not see this structure. Also want to speak to the detached option. It's a very viable option. And it can be built quite a bit larger than what this proposal is. It can be built 2,400 square feet with zero variance, 5 feet from the property line, and approximately 10 to 15 feet from the house, which would work quite well given that the patio is there. They'd have to wheel through the snow a little bit and get to the pool, but it's a viable option. It can be done that way. So I would also encourage Eric and Randy to share some of their discussion with the neighbors, especially the ones next door.
John, before you go, if you angle the pool to the 20 or 25 foot mark, how much does that improve the view? How much different is that?
It doesn't change the view, it just makes it 10, 15
Okay.
feet further away. Nothing changes.
Thank you, John.
Randy and Radigan. So we did speak with the neighbors immediately beside us on either side, and they assured us they were in support. I know I don't have the proof here because, like I said, I did not want to cause people to choose sides, but we did spend several hours with our neighbors because we did want to hear their concerns if they also had concerns, and they said they didn't, so.
Yeah, and I guess America, something that they did hear though, that it would be a commercial space, is what they told us, that it was above ground pool and we had no permits. So originally they came over to meet us right away when we were working on the house, and they're awesome people, met all of our kids, invited us for wine in the evenings if we wanted to join them with their music, and they seemed like amazing people. And then we were surprised to see their name on that list. So then our 1 hour week we have together, or two, we went down there and we chatted with them, got to know them quite well, and just asked them about it, and they supported it. Like, they thought it was great. So yeah, anyway, that's where we found misinformation.
I'll ask if anyone else has any new comments that they would like to add.
It's Ron Ginter again.
Yes.
Just to reference the last meeting again, I believe we heard from the applicant that he had gone around to all the neighbors on Cardinal, and everybody was in support of their project. As of today, I got 2 more signatures on Cardinal Place, and they have never seen Eric or Randy at their place to talk about the project. That seemed to be the same as the last time. So there seems to be a little bit of, yeah, he said, she said, he said, you know. So it's, we are, again, we have to say, we don't want to not support what they are doing. That is totally not where we are at. It has nothing to do with that. And what they're doing for their child and for other child is just totally amazing. They're great parents. You can't say anything bad about their parents. This has nothing to do with that. Let's comply with the bylaws that are in place, and let's move forward, and then I think it'll all be good.
Thank you for those comments.
Can we see the petition? Like the
Yes,
added one?
Don, go ahead. What would you like to see?
Well, it would be nice if you could just pass the petition on that was submitted, just so that we can see it, please.
I will ask if council has any
Speaking your mic,
clarification. I'd ask if council has any clarification that they would like to have before we close the hearing. Once the hearing is closed, we can discuss it and debate it. We cannot take new information after we close the hearing.
Can I say something without having clarification?
Absolutely.
Okay, I just want to say, you know, I respect both parties a lot, and you know, nights like tonight make me want to quit council, because one has to make a decision, and it's always a tough decision to make. And yeah, it's too bad we get to these points sometimes, and it happens. But yeah, it's that makes, you know, nights like this make our job not a fun job. That's for sure.
All right.
Council, any questions or thoughts before we close the hearing?
Just like to echo some of Don's words. These are not easy decisions to make. They're tough. It can sound personal, but they're not. It's just that we have to pick one. We can't pick two. That's why we ask questions, and we get all the information we can, best information we can, and then we move forward.
Okay, not seeing anybody in chambers with any final new comments?
Mr. Mayor?
Not.
Mr. Mayor, Council Max Waddell, can council order a compromise and not give them a building permit to proceed? Because a compromise works on one side.
Council can take a look at what's here. We can approve, deny, or we can approve with conditions, yes.
So you could direct the applicant that they have to compromise somewhat?
We absolutely can.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I don't see council with any additional questions or thoughts. Nobody else in chambers. Be it resolved that the public hearing for variation application number VA 2025-006 for 8 Cardinal Place be closed. Mover.
Ryan.
Second.
Peter?
Final thoughts before we close it? All in favor?
Yay.
Carried. Be it resolved that council approve variance number VA 2025-006. Mover.
Michael.
Second.
Peter?
Comments or thoughts?
Marvin here, if I may.
Please.
Thank you, and my apologies for not being there. I am away, but when I'm away, I always try to, if possible, be part of council making decisions. And as has already been said by a number of people, and as we talked about last meeting, that it is a very, very difficult decision and something like this. And that is why I was very pleased at the end of last meeting when we had broached the option of seeing if they could come to a compromise. And so that really was something that I really appreciated. This is a very major variation, and I know both parties have alluded to the fact that this is a major variation. And the point also can be that sometimes if a variation makes sense when there's a different situation happening. We talked about compromise, and compromise by nature means that it's not ideal for either party, but it's the best decision that they could come up with and they've decided to live with. So I had hoped that it could have reached compromise that both could live with. I know that both people or both parties would not be totally happy with it, but I believe in the long run, in the spirit of good neighborhood and so on, that would have been a good compromise. When I think of many decisions that we've had before us over the years, our history of council is we will support, there's a statement being made that if it's a minor variation, then it's not usually a problem to work it out and so on. But when it's a very major renovation, the history of council is you support it based on compromise between neighbors so that it works. So I think, like as I said, the precedent to have people try to work on something like this, if both parties agree, so that something can work for both parties, that is something that I would really value a lot. And in this case, I think if there's any way that we as council can facilitate something like that, that would be awesome. I believe that to me it seems that compromise and a solution is still available. So that is what my hope would still be, to do that, because It's the last thing I would like to do is to vote one way or the other, because I know that it's not going to be, that it's going to be something that's going to be very disappointing for some of you. So you know, the idea of council supporting something that could be worked out on both parties, that might seem appealing to me, because I want the relationship, long-term relationship of the neighbors to be there. Thank you.
I think your challenge right now, Marvin, would be that the hearing is closed and any compromise that's brought forward would be brought forward as a requirement, as a condition of approval.
That's correct.
So do you have a suggestion?
It's difficult. If I did have a good suggestion, I would have said it last week already, or 2 weeks ago already. But I guess perhaps something that would address some of the distance, maybe I don't know, could be something between the 9 and the 25 feet, something like that, that might work out. I don't know, just I would like this to work out okay for both parties.
Thank you, Marvin. Anybody else in council wishing to add some comments?
Yeah, like I mentioned last time too, that the best case scenario is if the two parties agree, and especially before we even get here. This is very uncomfortable, and I agree with Dawn about that. It's very uncomfortable because both respected community members, and we'd like to stay that way. I know we've had we learn from experience, but experiences go both ways.
Mm-hmm.
I know that 264 Main Street was another big hearing that we had multiple times with many emotions. Left a bit of a scar on me too. Neighbors having to live with somebody impeding on their space with multiple stories. It was a struggle, and this one again now is a struggle. I wasn't sure, Marvin, if you were leaning towards suggesting that the compromise that was proposed would be something that you would move forward.
Can we pull that one up and put it on the screen if you don't mind? I'll ask members in chambers not to speak if that's okay.
So the problem we have a little bit is we're not engineers, or we're not home planners. Like it's hard. It'd be, and I see the compromise, but I don't know the feet or something like that. It's hard for us to say, 12 feet instead of 9 feet, or 15 feet instead of 25 feet. That's the tough one for us to, because my fear is we're going to be back here again in 2 weeks.
How? If you have a vote?
I know, but if we vote against, let's say we say compromise of 15 feet, and they might say, no, we don't like it, we need 18 feet or 20 feet, or whatever the feet is, okay, that's the.
It's a new application and a new hearing.
Yeah, and then we might be right back to where we're at now. But whatever, that's.
Can you have multiple variance requests if they're denied? Like if one's denied?
I would need some help with that.
Stephanie?
I'll ask Stephanie, who is our manager of planning and permits, to give us some guidance on that.
Yeah, Stephanie Jantz, planning and permitting manager. Looking at the Planning Act, you can't resubmit an identical variance. You could resubmit a slightly different application, though.
What's the definition of similar?
I'd have to look at the definition in the Planning Act,
Okay.
but it has to be substantially different.
Okay. Thank you. Further thoughts or comments in terms of what you're struggling with and what you will use to form your decision?
What I struggle with.
I'll get you to
Sorry?
your microphone as well, please.
Yep. Do I have to say my name?
I think we know who you are.
What I struggle with is the precedent that sets, and that's what scares me a bit, because I know the bylaws are in place. I know this is a massive lot, and it's a interesting shaped lot, and yeah, it is. And to me, it's the precedent that we set is when we give up rear yard, then what happens next? The next person says, well, you did it there. And I know it's a huge yard, and it's unique. It's a very unique situation. That's, like I say, to me, it's the precedent setting. What scares me a bit is when you allow this,
I would suggest the 9-foot and 8-foot rear yard precedent has been set a number of times in a number of different areas, primarily with decks and covered shelters.
Yeah.
But we have.
Yeah, I guess with decks and
we
covered
have
shelter,
done
yeah,
that
yeah.
before.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah. Just for clarity's sake.
Yeah, but, but I know, it's tough.
And I struggle with the fact that if there's a detached pool, I think that's just gonna get worse. Right? It's not gonna be better, for sure. Even if it gets turned, won't change much for view. And again, we have people here that are both passionate on either side and good people, good folks. It's a tough decision. Should me and Don leave? We both want to quit over this one. I said, should me and Don both leave? We both want to quit over this one.
I don't see more thoughts prepared to be added. I don't see more comments. Does that tell me that you're ready for the question?
No, I'm not ready. I'm not afraid of setting precedent, but I want to have precedent that is right and that is fair. And to me, there has to be a win-win in this, and I think it's possible. I agree with one of the comments that one of the councillors made, that we are not architects and designers, and we can't say, oh, you should do it 11 feet and that'll be perfect. I don't know. But I would like to propose that we support this document, that this hearing, and subject to agreed upon compromise on both parties, and that would put the ball into their court to work hard, and hopefully would result in something that would be good for the people that want to build a pool, and good for the people that want to preserve their view.
Do I hear that as a condition of approval?
That would be, for me, a condition of approval.
Is that a thing?
And what happens if a
Hang
compromise?
on, let's confirm that first. Stephanie.
So the public hearing has been closed,
Correct.
and council has a couple of decisions ahead. If you look at section 97 of the Planning Act, and if you actually refer to the planning handbook, it might be helpful just to review the purpose of a variance. So the purpose of a variance is to provide flexibility where the zoning bylaw has not anticipated every variation in the characteristic of the land, and provides assurance to landowners. Variances are to be considered in accordance with section 97 of the Planning Act. And that gives council basically two options: to reject the variance, or to vary the application of specific provisions in the zoning bylaw with regards to the affected property in the manner specified in the order of the variance. So you can approve with no conditions, or you can approve with conditions, or you can deny. Those are the three options.
Thank you.
It does speak to the conditions or the evaluation criteria which council should be considering the variance. It needs to be compatible with the general nature of the surrounding area. It must not be detrimental to the health or general welfare of people living or working in the surrounding area, or negatively affect other properties or potential development in the surrounding area. Is the minimum modification of a zoning bylaw required to relieve the injurious effect of the zoning bylaw on the applicant's property, and is generally consistent with the applicable provisions of the development plan, zoning bylaw, and any secondary plan bylaw? I would suggest that, you know, that precedent should be carefully set, but also that precedent can be very narrowly viewed. This isn't a regular lot, and in some ways the side yard can be viewed or treated as a rear yard, also a side yard. So there is some flexibility in how you view it. The zoning bylaw is very clear, it's defined as a rear yard. But depending on your perspective from the adjacent landowners, it either functions or is viewed as a side or a rear. So, but just to reiterate, council, because the public hearing has been closed, you have the options to approve with conditions, or deny.
Thank you very much for that additional background, Stephanie. Marvin, does that clarify it at all for you?
It does, and because as I said, I believe there still is possibility of getting this project done in such a way that both parties are able to do it. I know that for me, and because of other decisions over the decades or so of times I've been on years I've been on council, we have always, as I said earlier, heavily based our decisions on being able, like if it's a major variation, based on the ability to have both parties affected, or all parties affected in some cases, being able to live with the compromise in some way. So for me, because it's a very major variation, if there's no way of having a condition put in, and based on my background and my experience in the past, I will have to vote against approval of this variation, and I do not want to do that if we can find a better solution.
Thank you, Marvin.
But we did that 2 weeks ago, really.
I think at this point in time, because the hearing is closed, we can't kick it back.
No, I don't.
If we're looking at saying we want to compromise, it's a compromise that we put as a condition of approval.
Then we'd specify the compromise?
That's where we are today. We can put a condition on approval.
I know, but we did, 2 weeks ago, we said.
2 weeks
table
ago.
it.
Pushed it as.
Right, we adjourned the hearing to give the
put-
two people to work together.
Exactly.
They had some conversations, they were not able to come to terms, and that brought it back here to us.
So now, if we say, yes, you have to come to terms, that's a tough one too.
It ultimately makes the decision. If they're not able to come to terms, then you either don't move forward, or you move forward with a standard.
Yeah.
Those are the pieces. If we approve and it's not acted on in 12 years, then, or 12 months, I believe, then it expires. 12 years would be a long time. But Stephanie, correct me if I'm wrong, if we approve with conditions and are not acted on in 12 months, then they expire.
Correct.
Thank you.
What conditions are you talking about?
I don't know. I'm what Marv's talking about.
We see something here with some orange lines that are drawn differently than obviously the plan that's there. The plan that I see doesn't run parallel to the fence.
Close to,
Would
looks
we
like.
consider saying that, could you build a building that runs parallel to the fence
But parallel with what setback?
with the one at the front? The one that seems to be accepted from the front of the building.
25 feet, is that what you're saying from there?
It wouldn't be 25 at the end. It may well be, if we look,
Doesn't have any
and I'm
dimension.
trying to zoom in, but when I'm looking at that drawing, it does not appear to run parallel to the fence.
Yeah, and the challenge is if you said a condition that it needs to be parallel to the fence, you still need to have a setback number.
Yeah.
So,
That piece can be, the front of the building can stay where it is and then run parallel to the fence. The details of how many feet that's away,
Henry, the
Can
front
be
of the
determined.
building is the bottom.
or either way, the top part where the lines converge, on the northeast corner of the
Okay.
building, of that planned build. That doesn't make sense.
What are you saying about that?
If we run from here parallel to the fence, it ends up in between the two. It ends up in between the original one, and it ends up in between the proposed one.
Okay.
Did that do nothing other than muddy the water?
No, I mean, I was thinking along the same lines, and I think that's what Marvin was saying though too.
Yes, I don't know if you need to have that, I would be prepared to support that.
But I'm not following. I see the line, but.
What I'm
Basically
suggesting
saying is
it-
if that
it's
orange
in the
line
middle.
was, that would be that compromise would be what he would accept.
Okay, so and I can't see it on the drawing, but is that,
They don't know the setback.
So
That's why I'm
instead of-
saying you don't know the
So instead of
setback.
9 feet, and you take the difference between the 9 and the 21, and makes us an architect.
Okay, so, hold on.
And then I'll ask,
The view
I'll ask
doesn't-
no
the
more
view doesn't
comments from the
change.
chamber, please.
Okay, so are we ready to vote?
for what?
Approve, deny, or approve the conditions?
I'm afraid to put conditions unless we know what the specific conditions are.
Well, nobody has a condition to propose at this point.
I just don't think it's not gonna make a difference on the sight line or on
Okay.
on anything, in my view,
Yeah, good point.
right? If you swing it 10 feet one way or 5 feet another way, it's not gonna do a thing. Right?
I respectfully disagree.
I agree,
think
disagree
the proposal that was suggested was something, it doesn't matter whether I think it makes a difference or not. It matters whether the people that are involved can live with it. And if that was a proposal that was made as a compromise, of course it wasn't, obviously we know none of these decisions here are ideal for either party. If that was something that they were able to live with, and that would still allow the unit to be constructed with the building in some way, that to me would be something that I would be prepared to support.
So what we're seeing here is a suggestion of 21 feet. The initial application was 9. Somewhere in between is 15. And again, the unintended consequences of not being architects and trying to design a building on the fly, guys,
We're
is
making up a number, then that's.
correct. Yeah. And that's sometimes when we try to force a compromise, we end up in an awkward
Well, and that's
spot.
what we tried to force, so.
Correct.
Okay,
Marvin has stated his opinion. He would like to see a compromise of a kind. We bandied a couple back and forth. I'm sensing that the members in chambers are not comfortable putting an arbitrary number out there and would prefer a yes or no question. Is that correct?
Yes.
For myself, yeah.
Okay. Marvin, any final thoughts?
No, that was my opinion.
Last comments before I ask.
yeah, I'm of the similar opinion of Marvin. It's very difficult though.
Like if we can, yeah, like I say, to me, I'm nervous about saying a compromise, because what is that?
And that's where he's
Correct.
saying you
And
can't.
that's why we're back to, at this point in time, a yes or no question.
Yeah.
Well, or saying just to be yes Winkler, yes if, and yes when.
Correct.
So that's the yes with conditions.
Yeah, yes, if they can agree, yeah.
And we tried the yes if at the last meeting. The two groups came back and suggested that the work that they had put into trying to reach that was not successful.
Right.
So-
Now we're back on only the last option we have now is yes when. Yes, when they meet certain conditions, then we'll approve it.
But we don't have any conditions that we can come up with.
And that was the key piece, Marvin. In chambers, we've bandied this back and forth, and I suspect I know you've heard it, I suspect you've seen it as well. We're not able to come to a consensus on what the condition would be, and the 6 of us in chambers are back, at this point in time, unless something new comes forward, are back to a yes or no question. Yes, we approve, or no,
Correct.
we deny.
And you can all see why this is very difficult for us. We clearly can't come to a decision because it's a difficult one. So, or can't come to consensus, I guess. So yeah, I guess it's yes or no.
Okay. All those in favor? All those opposed?
Yay.
It is carried 5-2. That was a tough one. We'll continue then into public hearing for bylaw number 2347-25 and variation number VA 2025-005 for 1219 Mountain Avenue. David.
All right. Give me 1 sec here. So the second public hearing is a public hearing for rezoning as well as a variance application. The rezoning is at 1219 Mountain Avenue, and right now the zoning is an R1 residential lower density zone, and the public hearing is to rezone it to an R2 residential medium density. And in R1 you are allowed to have 7 dwelling units per acre, while on an R2 you can have up to 15 dwelling units per acre. And so the rezoning is requested in order to construct a multi-family apartment. Also, like I said, it also has a variance application for the same address, and the variance number, application number is VA 2025-005. The applicant is Level Up Builders. The owners are Jacob and Eva Wiebe. It's again at 1219 Mountain Avenue, and the variance requested are to reduce the minimum front south yard setback from the required 25 feet to 12 feet and 6 inches, and also to reduce the minimum front east yard setback from the required 25 feet to 15 feet. The purpose is in order to construct a multi-unit dwelling in the proposed R2 residential medium density zone, and we have not received any objections to these public hearings. And I also like to highlight a few items from the report to council on page 3 under lot grading and drainage, where it says city has approved a stormwater management plan. The city approved stormwater management plan providing on-site stormwater detention will be required, and the applicant has been informed of these requirements and possible high costs associated with having limited green space available. And it is recommended that bylaw 2347-25 be given second and third reading, subject to city approval of engineered grading and servicing plans, and variance application number VA 2025-005 be approved subject to city approval of engineered grading and servicing plans.
Thank you, David. I'll ask if there's anybody here in chambers who wishes to speak in favor of this. The proponent firstly would be given the opportunity if they'd like one.
Good evening. My name is Arthur Cron. I work for Level Up Builders, which is the owner Jake and Eva Wiebe, who are with us here as well. We would like to construct a 6-unit apartment on this lot at 1219 Mountain Avenue. Currently, there's a single-family home on the yard, an older one that we would like to move away. And we've had many meetings with the Winkler Planning Department and with the different draft people to design this. We've taken privacy concerns into account for the neighbors with the way we've designed it, with the parking lot and the parking stalls the way they are, so that they don't shine light into the neighboring yards, especially at nighttime, and with the noise, and also with privacy concerns with the way the bedrooms are oriented. And we've planned it with balconies to the front, which is part of the variation, so as to not have the privacy concerns with the balconies in the back. And also, the reason for the variation is because of the way the parking lot and the driveways have been designed. Forced us to push the building further to the south, which is the reason that we need that variation for the south front yard. The balconies, we wouldn't have to put them there. It would in fact be cheaper for us to not include them. But in the infill guidelines that the City of Winkler has, part of the consideration is to design the buildings in a pleasing way, that they have good curb appeal and that they blend well into the community. And so we felt that the balconies were a nice aesthetic touch to that. And also for the tenants, we felt it improved the quality of life for the tenants there, and that was also a major factor for Jake and Eva when they started the design of this project. The other option would have been, and I think it's mentioned in these notes here, that planning department suggested maybe shrinking the building size so that the balconies could fit in there and then we wouldn't need the variation. But we felt that the size was the way it is right now is better for the tenants. It improves the quality of life. They have ample bedroom sizes and living space in there, and if at all possible, we'd like to keep it that way. We are trying to provide infill in the City of Winkler for people that would like to move to the community, but not to cram them into tight spaces. We tried to consider that they would have ample room in there as well. So that was all part of the consideration. We have met with a local engineer to tentatively design a stormwater management plan, and so we have a tentative plan in place. So if this gets approved, we are prepared and willing to do that. And yeah, I guess anything other than that, if the city has, or you as council have any questions, we'd be happy to address them.
Council?
Is there anyone wishing to speak?
We'll give opportunity if you have questions at this point.
Just a question on the balconies. I like the appeal, the look of the building. I'm struggling a little bit with the balconies, you know, kind of encroaching onto the sidewalk a bit. And I'm just wondering, is there possibilities of putting the balconies on the ends? But I don't know how the floor plans look.
But on the ends, then you're on the west side, though. Then you're looking at the neighbors. They're trying to avoid having the neighbors' privacy, right?
The west side would be kind of encroaching, I guess, onto the driveway, and the east side would be. It looks like there's a little bit more space, but maybe not. I'm just, you know, maybe.
But there's only one set of units on the east side. The center units couldn't have the balcony anywhere else.
Yeah.
And the south side is where the sun is, which makes sense.
Totally, yeah.
The east side is also considered a front yard because it's a corner lot, so that would be the same concern on the east side.
Yeah, true.
And then on the west side, yeah, that is a neighbor there, and then that would be a privacy concern, so that is the reason why we have them on the south side. The building itself, if it gets approved this way, the building itself, the nearest point will be 18 feet from the south property line.
Okay.
It's only the balconies that
encroach
are closer, yeah.
And I like, you know, I'm an outdoor space guy, so I'm all about balconies and stuff like that. I like that.
And we did, when drafting it, we did look at what it looked like without the balconies, and it, in our view, it definitely improves the look of it considerably. And one thing I did forget to mention is Jake, the owner, did meet with most of the surrounding neighbors, and none of them voiced any serious objections. Some of them did have some slight concerns, but Jake was able to address those. Most of them were in favor of it, which I guess is evidenced by the fact that nobody's here, or at least I haven't heard of any objections. I guess we'll find out.
Yeah.
Sorry, I must be making assumptions, but, so, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak to this project? Either for or against? I don't see anyone here. Council have any final questions that they'd like to ask before we close the hearing?
This one seems too simple.
Exactly. Come on, somebody oppose. You're just kidding.
It's hardly democratic if we don't, right?
Exactly.
Be it resolved that the public hearing for bylaw number 2347-25 and variation number BA 2025-005, that's a misprint here, it should be 005, be closed. Mover?
Done.
Second.
Andrew?
All in favor? Carried. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2347-25 to rezone 1219 Mountain Avenue be read a second time. Mover?
Peter.
Marvin?
Marvin got the second. Comments? All in favor? Oh, well, sorry, Marvin, go ahead.
Sorry, yeah, I like the fact that they have learned from challenges that we've had in other areas, and I appreciate the fact that they addressed a lot of the concerns in terms of lighting in the backyard and so on, and aesthetics and so on. So that is something, as I think one of the other councillors said, makes this one for me easier, makes it easy to support.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Marvin. Not seeing further thoughts, all in favor?
Yay.
Sorry, Andrew did have some further thoughts. I was a little too quick on the trigger. I'm sorry, Andrew.
No,
Please go ahead.
I'm just still thinking.
I can add in the meantime, living on 13th Street, this doesn't affect me directly, but it is still kind of my neighborhood, and
Yep.
yeah, my opinion, that would be a good use of that space and a welcome addition to our neighborhood there.
Okay.
Thoughts, Andrew?
No, I'm glad to hear there's no neighbors objecting.
The benefit, I believe, of getting out there and visiting your neighbors and hearing them out and making changes that make this more appealing.
Yeah, because when they have neighbors objecting,
It's tougher. That's very, very hard.
Yeah.
Okay,
Ready for the question?
sure.
All in favor?
Yay.
Carried. Be it resolved that bylaw 2339-25 be given third reading, subject to city approval of engineered grading and servicing plans. Mover.
Ryan.
Second.
Michael?
Final thoughts? Carried. Or all in favor, I'll ask, and then it's carried.
assuming.
That was an assumption that almost gets me into trouble. Be it resolved that council approve variance number VA 2025-005, subject to city approval of engineered grading and servicing plans. Mover.
Peter.
Marvin?
Oh, he beat me.
Yep, Marvin got the motion, Peter got the second. Final thoughts? Are we ready for the question?
Sure.
All in favor?
If we voted the last one, you might as well vote for this one. Okay, this next item, I've always stepped out for this stuff that my dad's involved in. So it's a perceived conflict. I do not have a direct conflict, but I will step out.
Okay.
Thank you, Andrew. Let the minutes show that Andrew stepped out to a perceived conflict.
Thanks.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
We will then move to a public hearing for bylaw number 2339-25 to rezone the parks.
Yes, so the next public hearing is a combined public hearing for a subdivision and a rezoning. So the rezoning is, like you mentioned, for what we call the parks. It's the address would be SW9-3-4W, and right now it's the R zone, which means it's a development reserve zone, and so the application is for rezoning is from the R zone to actually 4 different zones. First one being the R1 zone, residential lower density zone, the R3 zone, residential higher density zone, PR zone, parks and recreation, and the PI, public infrastructure zone. And we have also not received any objections to the rezoning application or this subdivision. It was circulated, it was posted, and there's a report from the province and from the city to council. And I'd just like to highlight the recommendation at the end. It's recommended that subdivision number 4463-24-8421 be approved subject to rezoning approval and a development agreement. Terms and condition of the development agreement will be in accordance with the city's report to council. And it is also further recommended that bylaw 2339-25 be given second and third reading, subject to a development agreement. Terms and condition of the development agreement will be in accordance with the city's report to council. So,
Thank you, David.
I should probably say the applicant is 2017983 Manitoba Limited.
Thank you. I'll give the proponent an opportunity to speak to this if they so desire.
John Fraze.
Good evening,
with
John.
Parkland Place, 2017983. This subdivision is for duplexes and for multi-family sites. I do have to say, though, that this is one of the first times that I'm coming before council and I do not have a single-family residential lot for sale.
Wow.
The city of Winkler, I'm saying this, needs to be more proactive in getting some of these subdivisions through. This one is going good. It's coming through and it's going through quick. Appreciate that. But they need more single family
Absolutely,
as well.
we do.
I just want to make that comment before I continue on here.
And
Just a few things in the report to.
I'll quickly interrupt you though, John. I'm certainly, we would be very open to see how that is. We know that we need residential lots and how we can get there. And I respect and appreciate your encouragement to do so. Ultimately, the city of Winkler isn't in the land development business. We have very capable developers who do that very well. And if there are some ways that some conversations can be had to hurry that, we're always open to that conversation.
Yeah, it's just in the 30-some years I've been working with developing.
Never been in this place.
First one.
Yeah.
Okay, just a few comments on the report to council.
Yes.
I want to clarify that there needs to be a correction on that one. Page 3, under the page 3. Regarding the DJs, meeting with DJs, and it says we have an agreement. That is incorrect.
Okay.
When I reported, I said we had met and had a discussion with the people from DJs regarding crossing over there. So please make that correction in that report to council. The other item I want to mention is like at the end, and I know David mentioned that here, the recommendation to approve the variance and so forth. I have that now. See that here, but with a development agreement, according to these report to city council, I do not want to approve the report to city council with all the items that are in there for a development agreement. I want to be able to negotiate some of those items. I think it was on page 8.
Page 8.
I have the wrong one here, I think. That's why. Yes, it says it is further recommended that, the last line, bylaw
232425 be given third reading, subject to a development agreement. Terms and conditions of development agreement will be in accordance with the city's report to council.
And your suggestion is that there are some pieces that you would like to negotiate?
Yes, there are.
Okay.
Yep.
So how would we word that?
It's subject to a development agreement, but not put that condition in that it has to be according to the city report to
Okay.
city council.
Just that way.
Yeah, I'm good with just saying it's just subject to a development agreement reached between the city and the developer.
Steph has
Steph, I wanted to comment.
Please.
Just to clarify, Stephanie Jans, Planning and Permitting Manager. That clause has been fairly standard for the last several years, and the main purpose is for transparency. Without council actively sitting with staff negotiating all development terms, we view a lot of those as operational decisions. And so the point of including the report and in as much detail there as possible is to identify potentially contentious items that council may choose to weigh in on and provide us conditions in the development agreement. Our development agreement templates are quite standard. Essentially, it would be a copy and paste for the parks phase 1, unless noted in the report to council. So it's not intending to, the report is there for transparency reasons, because we're just showing what the contentious issues may be that council may choose to weigh in on. That's why it's like that.
So substantially similar to phase 1, this is generally the same as Parks phase 1? That this report would create a development agreement that's generally the same, is that right?
Correct.
And there are some pieces there, John, if I understand correctly, that you would want to have some conversation around.
Right.
And that is because phase 1, there was a challenge in?
No, just according to what I read in the report to council.
Okay, and you feel that this...
I was good with phase 1. If it's similar to that, I don't think there'll be an issue.
Okay. So I guess the question I would ask again, then, this report is more or less, or how different than phase 1?
I would say that the red bullets would identify the more unique or contentious items. I suspect John is pointing to the landscaping requirements and or the sidewalk construction reference.
Which
John,
are...
maybe correct me if I'm wrong.
I'm just pulling it up here. There's a few items there. There's issues with the traffic signal turn lanes, Park Street, costs included in the new development fees, sidewalk on Park Street. I mean, that should not just be my cost. So those are some of the things that need to be negotiated.
And again, that's different than phase 1, if I'm hearing correctly. The points that you bring up now were not part of the Parks phase 1.
Right.
The development fees are stated, they haven't increased.
Correct.
So that will be identical to phase 1.
Right.
The sidewalk comment there was just to bring attention to the idea that our engineering services department is maybe a little bit unsatisfied with the inspection protocols, ensuring that sidewalks are built to city standards. There's still an unresolved deficiency that needs to be further investigated on Northlands Parkway, but that does have a significant impact on the potential life cycle of that sidewalk. If it prematurely fails, there are mechanisms in our development agreement, such as an extended warranty period, many different operational options that could be tweaked.
That sidewalk would not be part of the parks, though, would it?
Correct. The point of including that is this subdivision includes new sidewalk obligations, and it's just to identify that our engineering services department is contemplating operational changes.
The deficiencies she's talking about, we have hired people to do that. They just haven't got there yet.
And I think that piece, I can understand both sides. I can understand why we would want to have that as part of the conversation, but if it's not part of this plan, I can also understand, John, why you might not want to have that there. And I think a lot of this gets us to the negotiation piece. This report to council is exceptionally valuable to us because it tells us what's happening and where the concerns are and what needs to be looked at. But if we come to this meeting without those having been dealt with, it's a little bit of a challenge to say that they'll be in accordance with this because it doesn't leave an opportunity for discussion. So in this instance, I would be completely open to saying terms and conditions of the agreement will be in accordance with a negotiated agreement between the developer and the city. Because I do believe there are some pieces that do need to be discussed yet. If in fact we have two pieces that may not fully be a part of it, but we're here today, and if we say this is it, then there is no further ability for the developer to have discussion and negotiation around it. And I would suggest, again, it's important, as you stated, Stephanie, that council is aware of, and I would suggest that the chair of planning and the mayor could be involved if discussions are needed, where council involvement is there. But I don't believe that this makes sense to have our developer here say, I will agree to everything that's there that I don't quite agree to. I'll ask, or I'll let you finish your comments if you have more. Is there anyone else who has comments here? I will ask too if staff have some additional thoughts.
I think the report to council from staff, like Stephanie mentioned, is for transparency. And I think staff, I mean, I should maybe not speak on behalf of the planning department now, but I think the feedback we would like to receive from council, if you read something in the report to council that you are not in agreement with, I mean, that's the kind of feedback that's quite important for us. I think at the end, we as staff, we are not opposed to negotiate anything with a developer. But if you see something glaring that you would say, no, definitely this is not what we would agree with, or this is definitely what we would like to have included, that's a feedback that is
Correct.
very valuable to us when we later on talk to the developer. So that's why we put that in there. And at this point, I think if you could give us maybe a little bit of feedback, I think that would be appreciated. But I mean, I'm probably saying nothing too much if I say that we could negotiate things.
Yeah, our
Please.
department negotiates each and every development agreement. There are some small and unique conditions for each development because none are the same.
Correct. And I get the feeling, or at least I'm hearing from John, that his feeling is that if we say that the development agreement has to be in accordance with this report to council, that at that point in time, his ability to negotiate with staff disappears, is his feeling.
Yeah, makes sense.
Council, do we have further thoughts or comments before we close the hearing? Are we okay with changing it to the development agreement will be in accordance with the negotiated, with a negotiated agreement between developer and staff?
So that would bring Dawn as planning chair.
If needed. I
If needed.
would
Okay.
hope
Yeah. Okay, if
that
needed, okay.
we're not needed, but if council input is needed, at that point in time, I would ask that the chair of planning and that the mayor be involved in that discussion.
And is that good with the applicants? Is that good?
Okay, if in fact that was the case, does that help a little bit if we go to a negotiated settlement? And the expectation would still be that the professionals, you as developers and our staff, would be able to negotiate that, but if an input is needed, that the chair of planning and the mayor would make themselves available to participate.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay?
It's good. I like it.
I like that.
I don't see
Marvin
further.
here.
Go ahead, Marvin.
It seems to me that that is how a lot of our agreements in the past have happened, to agreed upon an agreement, right? So it's not one side puts it down and the other side yea or nay.
Thanks for those comments. Do we have anything further before we close the hearing? Be it resolved that public hearing for bylaw number 2339-25 and subdivision number 4463-24-8421 be closed. Mover.
Ryan.
Second.
Michael.
Final comments? All in favor?
Yay.
Carried. Be it resolved that council approves subdivision number 4463-24-8421, subject to approval of rezoning bylaw 2339-25 and a development agreement. Terms and conditions of that development agreement will be as negotiated between the developer and city staff. Mover.
Peter.
Second.
Don?
Final questions? Final comments? All in favor?
Yay.
Carried. Be it resolved that bylaw 2339 to rezone the parks phase 2 be given second reading. Mover.
Michael.
Second.
Ryan.
Comments? All in favor?
Yay.
Carried. Bylaw number, or be it resolved that bylaw number 2339-25 to rezone the parks phase 2 be given third reading, subject to a development agreement. Mover.
No, he did already.
Mover.
Don?
Second.
Ryan.
Mark.
Ryan beat you, Marvin.
Yep.
Final thoughts or comments? Not seeing any? All in favor?
Yay.
Carried. We will ask Andrew to rejoin us, please, if we could. Welcome back, Andrew. We will now hold a public hearing for variation number 2025-008 for 10 Warbler Way. David.
Correct. So this application for variance is from Carl Dirksen. The owner is Carl Dirksen and Jana Friesen at 10 Warbler Way. The request is, or the variance request is to reduce the minimum south rear yard setback from the required 5 feet to 2 feet, and also to reduce the minimum east side yard setback from the required 5 feet to 2 feet. The purpose is in order to construct an accessory building in the R1 residential lower density zone, and the city has not received any objection to this application.
Thank you very much, David. Is there anybody in chambers wishing to speak to this? Either for or against? Not seeing anybody here.
Anybody online?
And nobody online.
Okay.
Good question, though. Andrew? Council, do we have any thoughts on it before we close the hearing?
I would have liked to ask these people if it'd be okay with 5 foot side yard and 2 foot rear yard, because the rear yard is a park, but 5 foot from the neighbors, but they're not here to talk to it.
I'm not comfortable with 2 feet from the side yard either.
2 feet from side? I
Yeah.
get, but it's been done before, though.
I know.
But if the neighbor does that as well, then what? Because you can, because the neighbor could be 3 feet from his house and 2 feet from the side yard, right? Stephanie, what's the distance from a house to a detached building? 3 feet, right? Minimum.
For the building of this size?
Yeah. Like this one here is 13 from the house to the shop. But if the neighbor were to add one also 2 feet from the boundary, he could go within 3 feet of his house, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I guess he was approved for 3 feet back in August, correct?
I would say minimum 3 feet for side yard for me, but,
That's what was approved
and then what,
previous.
Wait, there's a previous on this?
Yeah.
at what
Did I
point
miss
does
some notes?
at what
Oh,
point
yeah,
does
I
a
did.
firewall come into play?
So there are comments in the shared note to council.
Okay.
MSTW was circulated. The applicants are aware that the building will require fire ratings and non-combustible cladding and/or sheathing on the sides adjacent to the property lines. And the applicant is aware of this and has accepted that as feedback.
So it says the applicant was informed that will not be permitted from Grandeur Park, like you can't drive around there. But I noticed they just had somebody else their neighbor just built a pool that accessed the park.
They didn't check with the city first.
So how do we deal with that? Because I know there's lots of damage that, I don't know there, but I know other places, things get damaged and they're supposed to be put back, but usually they're not necessarily put back to the standards they were. And now it's taxpayers' dollars that are trying to fix it.
We do have an excavation permit that would normally apply prior to construction, prior to approval. And then there is a damage deposit, a $400 deposit. That would be applied for the restoration works if done to public land. But again, that one wasn't given city approval prior to construction. So the damage was already completed. We worked with the applicant to minimize additional damage.
So they already have 3 feet here.
So we approved 3 feet, I guess, in August of 2023. Go back to 3.
I'd be okay with leaving 3 on the table still.
Yep, I'd be good with 3.
Same here.
Okay, I look at the comments, and we have 5 comments from our staff that suggest there isn't a concern with this. A number of different reasons why there is not a concern. Obviously, council has the decision, and we're still in hearing, so we can discuss what we need to discuss. But based on those 7 points, actually, that sit there, it suggests that this is not inappropriate for this area. That said, once we close hearing and we move forward, we can add the
We can't
condition if
approve
we'd like
everything
to.
tonight, can we?
What's that?
We can't approve everything tonight, can we? Somebody's got to be a.
But didn't you deny them?
Who's left? No, that's fine. I'm.
What I'd like
I'm
to
okay
do,
with
let's
2
move
feet.
into the actual motion.
sorry.
then. Be it resolved, the public hearing for variation application number VA 2025-008 be closed. Mover.
And
Second.
Peter.
Final thoughts before we close the hearing?
As much as preference would be to keep that 3 feet that was initially offered. I think your point that those 7 bullet points made by staff there have a lot of merit.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's close the hearing. We'll put the motion to the floor and we can discuss it. All in favor? Okay, the hearing is closed. Be it resolved that council approve variation number VA 2025-008, subject to city approval of lot grading permit. Mover.
Ryan.
Second.
Don.
Now we have an opportunity if you would like to add a variation. I don't see anything. Are we ready for the?
so in the cases where we have accepted 2 feet, that's basically when no neighbors have objected and there's no current desire from the neighbor to build another shed close to it, right? Because if the neighbor wants to build a property there or a building there now, they couldn't go 2 feet.
Well, we couldn't say no either.
Yeah, the firewall.
So the building fire code requirements for the non-combustible construction is measured to the property line. That mitigates the risk for adjacent property
Okay.
owners. So they have equal rights to apply for the same variance. They would be subject to the same requirements.
Okay. Yep.
Anything else before we ask the question? All in favor?
Yay.
Carried. This will take us to public hearing for conditional use number 2025-003 and variation number 2025-009 at 1045 Grandeur Avenue. This is for a sign. In my day job, I own a sign company, so I'd like to declare a perceived interest. I have absolutely zero interest in this. I'm not involved in this project, but because I participate in an industry that this is about, I would like to be excused. And I'll hand the chair to Andrew.
All right. Do I need to wait for you to lead before we start?
Oh, well, fast. Come on.
Yeah.
Okay, public hearing for conditional use to, what was it, 2025-003. David?
Correct. So the first is an application for a conditional use. Conditional use number is CU 2025-003. The applicant is Winkler Rips. The owner is the city of Winkler. It's at 1045 Grandeur Avenue. The existing zoning is PR, Parks Recreation. And the request is in order to construct a large digital freestanding sign to be used as a scoreboard. The subject is a digital sign is a conditional use in the PR zone. And we have not received any objections to this application. And also with the same address is an application for a variance. Variance number will be 2025-009. Same applicant, same owner, same location. And the variance requested is to increase the maximum surface area of a digital sign from 75 square feet to 160 square feet. And the purpose is in order to construct a digital freestanding sign to be used as a scoreboard in the PR zone. Yeah, like I said, we have not received any objections. It has been circulated, and yeah, hand it back to you now.
Okay, is there anyone here wishing to speak for this application? Anyone online? Okay, anyone wishing to speak against this application? Okay. Any questions of council before we close the hearing?
Nope.
This is a one-sided sign?
Yes.
So this sign faces the diamond?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. No one has any questions? And
There was no advertising in the evening after the ballgame?
That will be operational, and
Okay.
we will have to work on an operational agreement between the Winkler Whips and us.
okay, and be it resolved that the public hearing for conditional use number 2025-003 and variation application 2025-009 be closed. Mover?
Michael.
Seconder, Peter. All in favor?
Yay.
That's carried. Be it resolved that council approve conditional use 2025-003 subject to compliance with TAC recommendations as it pertains to the use of a digital sign. Mover?
Ryan.
Seconder?
On.
Any comments from council? Hearing none. All in favor?
Yay.
That's carried. Be it resolved that council approve variance number VA 2025-009. Mover?
I can have it.
Peter, seconder Marvin. Any comments on that one? Hearing none, all in favor?
Yay.
That's carried. Grab Henry. Next, we will move into public hearing for variance application 2025-010, 1235 Mountain Avenue.
Oh, he did stick around.
Yeah, he's been here a while. Probably, need, to
Exactly.
go, probably need to use the washroom.
You've been a patient guy, Jake.
Okay, Henry, next one's open. David, want to kick us off?
Yep, so we reached our last public hearing. It's an application for a variance. Variance number 2025-010. The applicant is Jacob Neufeld. The owners are Jacob Neufeld and Elizabeth Neufeld. It's at 1235 Mountain Avenue. And the variance requested is to increase the maximum allowable density from 7 dwelling units per acre to 10 dwelling units per acre. Purpose is in order to construct a 2-unit dwelling in the R1 residential lower density zone. And we have not received any objections to this application. And you can see the recommendation from staff at the end of the report and the report to council.
Excellent. Does the proponent have any comments? Proponent shakes his head, does not have comments. Any thoughts from council?
Like there's no drawing on this one, hey?
Like
Just
for
a
the-
sketch?
For the
A
proposed.
sketch for the proposed main building.
I thought this was for the empty duplex proposed.
No.
Yeah, it's just for the lot itself right now. It's gonna turn into a duplex lot.
Yep.
And that's what it's for. That's why there's no, I'm not asking for a permit or anything, just for any building or anything right now, so.
Okay, so 1235 is the entire area. They're that little shaded portion is
1235 will turn into
two lots.
27 by 130, and the rest, remaining of 1235 will be attached to the other lot that is supposed to wrap around behind this
Oh,
duplex
okay,
lot.
okay. I
So
see.
it gives you that almost flag-like lot kind of thing.
Okay.
1219, if I'm not mistaken, was the one that was on earlier, right?
Right.
That's correct.
Yeah,
Sorry,
the apartment block will be
Yeah.
Yeah.
sixplex there.
Okay. Thanks, Jake.
Thank you. I don't see anybody else in chambers. Nobody online that we have. Council, are we ready to close the hearing?
I'll move.
Second.
Ryan.
Okay, so that will close public hearing for conditional use number 2025-003 and variation number 2025-009 at 1045 Grandeur Avenue. All in favor?
Oh, you're on the wrong one there,
That we did
Henry.
already.
Am I? Oh,
Yeah,
my
12
goodness.
We hadn't carried the
12.23.
last one yet either.
12.23.
I step out and you guys just take care of everything. Thank you.
Yeah.
12.23, we still gotta vote on closing it.
Yeah,
We've
we had
seconded.
moved it, but not closed.
So we'll close public hearing for variation number 2025-010. Thank you, Andrew. Mover.
We had that already.
Yeah.
Just looking for all
Just
in
need the
favor.
question.
All in
All in
favor.
favor? My
We
goodness.
got
Been a
this.
long night.
It's been a long night. Yeah, it's been a tough one.
Let's see if we can finish strong here. Be it resolved that council approve variation number BA 2025-010. Mover.
Peter.
Ryan.
Okay.
Peter got it, Ryan got the second.
Perfect.
Just a shade too slow.
Yep.
Final thoughts and comments before I ask. All in favor? Carried. Be it resolved that public hearings be adjourned and regular council reconvene. Mover.
Michael?
Second.
Ryan.
All in favor? Carried. That takes us to questions from media or public relevant to this meeting of council. Be it resolved that this regular meeting of council be adjourned. Mover?
Andrew.
Andrew got it, Marvin got the second. He was very, very quick, but not quite quick enough. All in favor?
You
Thank